the cloud just travels inland because it's still hot. The heat is pushing the clouds up. So once it hits the mountainside, like there, like behind you, it forms what we call rain clouds. There's precipitation from every single stomata of the pores of all the stems and the leaves and the branches. There's a precipitation, like clouds of mist going up, and it's met by these rain clouds that form. It gets darker and darker. If you look back, it'll get darker and darker and darker, and then it'll rain. So we're not supposed to cut trees because that's what it's meant to be there. And also, when all of a sudden this rainfall, so all these trees, you know, if like for example this tree, if you take out every single leaf and branches and then you lay it out on the ground, it's probably like 5 football fields. So imagine the holding capacity of every this longing. It's like natural. We can't even fight it. That's why when we travel, when we go on vacation, we look for the best paradise, right? Because we hate our own freaking lives. It's redundant. It's a rat race. There's so much competition. Nobody's there to help me. Like, where's the world? The government's doing this, that. It's like, it's so negative, right? So not only that, the topography of the Philippines, you have Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, and so many other. How can we communicate if we're so segregated? So even before the colonial time, we were already segregated. We didn't even know who lived in the next hill sometimes. So the stronghold, or the strong force of the Filipino people is the clan, tribal relationship of family, right? So this family, even courtship with another clan, brings two families together, being united in this holy matrimony, and then peace, you know, a community that helps each other. And then when you do that, you're healthy, right? You're not depressed because you always have somebody to talk to, your clan, your tribe, your family, your birth. It's not like you have to find a barkada, it's there. So living in Manila and coming here and seeing the eyepiece, and then when you reflect upon it, you see the stark difference and the need of the people for nature and really grounding themselves and touching the soil, smelling, right, breathing. All the senses are just in overload, and then you can have good sleep because you had vitamin D, and you kind of walked around, and you know you have this sense of community. So the girls here, I say, you know, my mom is looking for maid in Manila. You wanna go? They're like, no.
Manila.
So bakit? Kasi what we hear there is like you're stuck in a small room and it's hot. Mainit daw doon.
It's all true.
Yeah.
That's
So
true.
and walang nature and God in His creation, right? And not only that, we're not the only species in this world. We're one, but the most horrible, most destructive species in the world. So look at the wildlife of Mindanao.
Wow.
This one is what I call the halo-halo.
Halo,
The
halo,
halo-halo dove. There's a name for it. Yellow-breasted fruit dove. This one is a owl, a grass owl. There's so many of that here. And there's one in the eve of our church. And it dances like that with the music every Sunday. It's not there now, I couldn't show you, but there were two there. And then this one here are bats called kabogs. And the kabogs are the wingspan is 6 feet wide. So imagine this is thousands and thousands of bats just flying around. And because of that, there's food for the eagle, right? And civet cats, you know civet cats?
Yes,
yes. Yeah, so that's some of the many, right? So we decided to put together in 2006 a foundation called Hineleban. By the way, Tuminugan was given to us by the indigenous people, the name itself. We didn't name ourselves. So they said you should name when we were putting up the foundation, first they said you should name your foundation Hineleban. I said, what does that mean? It's so hard naman to pronounce. So Hineleban pronounced Hinuluban. So the E's in the Binuki dialect sounds like U. So instead of Hineleban, it's Hinuluban, yeah. Which means the mother tree of the rainforest that sustains the cycle of all life.
Beautiful.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Of course, when I heard the meaning, I'm like, okay.
Done.
And then they told us to name this place Tuminugan because apparently in where Price Hotel now is in Cagayan, because Cagayan and Bukidnon was one space. Cagayan de Oro was named by the Spaniards, right? So Bukidnon, the 7 tribes of Bukidnon were all here, spanning to Cagayan, the last one bordering Iligan. So there were 8 in Bukidnon before, now there's 7, plus that one in Iligan. And so they have a monotheistic belief in God the Creator in heaven, but they have a polytheistic belief in the sacredness of nature. So they don't revere nature, but they have respect for it. So rocks, trees, water, rivers, so they name them. So the mother tree is Hinuluban. So without the tree in the Philippines, we all die. Okay? So who are we? We are comprised with 3 sectors of the society: the indigenous people, the Muslim, and the Christians. Oops. So our vision, I have to read the vision. Okay, our vision is, we are stewards of God. We aspire to restore the high mountain forests of Mindanao, from where the rainfall sweeps down the plains through the months of the year, where pure water and rivers flow in abundance. And our values and mission we are a God-centered organization, united as one family with our diverse cultural communities. We share God's values of love, compassion, truthfulness, trustworthiness, and perseverance. We engage our high mountain forest communities and provide them sustainable livelihoods, thereby reviving the role of indigenous and Bangsamoro people as custodians of the forest. By doing so, we build bridges of peace and provide beacons of hope to those who have the least on the island of Mindanao, in a partnership of equals, respecting the dignity of the unique culture of the indigenous and Bangsamoro peoples. How do you feel about that?
Love it.
Yeah?
Moving.
Yeah.
Moving.
Yeah, so it was a workshop with them, and we didn't dictate like this is what we want to do, reforest and carbon credits or whatever. We really asked them, what is it that you want to see, what's your vision in life, and for them to say peace and dignity, so basics of freedom, right? So it's through working with nature, then you have some kind of crop that you can sell and be part of the economy instead of fighting, right? Fighting for, so it took John 3 years to unite the 7 tribes, because for 100 years, just like Cain and Abel, right? So many brothers, cousins, families, clans, ridos, like that.
The
diba?
Rido, yes.
That's Muslim side. They would fight. So they would have, John asked them, so what's forgiveness for you? Is there forgiveness? Yeah, okay, how do you go about it? Because we're Christian, right? Yeah, so how do you forgive each other? Because us, Christians, this is how we forgive. So it's a way to open up also our belief system. It's an open book, like nobody says you're wrong. There's no canceling here. So, okay, let's go through your rituals and let's go through it. So it's basically mothers of peace. So let's say the 2 of you are fighting and I'm your mom and she's your mom. So we'll talk and we'll meet in the other side of each river, and then they'll sacrifice a pig with their spear. They're gonna hold it down and kill it, and all the blood will wash down the river in the water. Doesn't it sound like Jesus, no? The sacrificial pig. And then all the anger, your anger, you put it in the pig, you kill in spirit, and the whole time, this tribe is here, or that family, the clan is behind this guy, and then this clan is on the other side of the river. Once the blood is gone and the water washes it away, then they have no choice but to forgive each other because they already put the anger there in the pig. Then they eat it. So we had to do several of that, and well, they did it, and we were just pushing them to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then John sent like backpackers to stay in different tribes just to listen, like observe and listen. But psychology, you have to observe and listen a lot. So they didn't really talk, they just asked questions, and then the more they would talk, the more things come out. And then it was reported back to John, and John made a matrix of like who was friend of who, you know.
Wow.
So
A
would call the
sociogram.
friend, yeah, and then bring the two that's fighting. So that he mediated between fighting people or datus or brothers or tribes for 3 years inside this house in the lanai. And so after that, first we made a sacred customary compact. That's what they call it, with one tribe, and then the rest of the tribe said, "Paano naman kami? We also want to join." So all the 7 tribes now see all the signatures, and then this one is for with the Muslims naman. So in terms of peace, John did that in Mindanao, and also brokered peace between the last standing MILF combatant, Commander Bravo, with General Galvez of then appointed Office for the of Peace, Office of the President for Peace during the Duterte time. So
Oh wow.
he negotiated the peace. That's why a lot of you are here, because it's peaceful.
So it was even during Duterte's time that was negotiated. That was recent.
Yeah, well, we tried like under the radar, or John tried with several administrations really, but I think because Duterte is from Mindanao, he really wanted to make sure that happened during his administration. So that's one good thing he did, right?
Yeah.
So here we have the first Peace and Unity celebration with the 7 tribes.
Wow.
Yeah, so they were all here.
Nice.
Like, look how happy they are.
And it was
smiling.
held here.
Yeah, right there.
Oh my gosh. Sana
And
all.
then the next year was a lot more. Yeah. Yeah, see that? 2016. All of a sudden, we're 1,500 na. Mahal na yung catering.
When were the efforts initiated?
When did it
The-
start?
the
2006.
2006.
Yeah.
Sana all.
And that was like a 9-year effort,
Yes.
huh?
Yeah, but intense 3 years.
Intense 3
That
years.
was
But the last one was only during Duterte's period.
Oops. Yeah. So,
Wow.
I can't turn this on for some reason. I have to download. Anyway, so here is a space where all the 7 tribes gathered together and saw each other and smiling for the first time. They were hugging,
Oh.
they were crying, they were asking for forgiveness, they ate together, they danced together, they compared like their stories, because they have stories that they passed down. They compared patterns in their clothes, and they asked, why do you tie it this way? How come us is like this? So our instrument, how come my kachapi is this big? Oh, because I use this tree and yours is this small. What's the difference in the sound? So they jam different sized drums, and what animal skin did you use there? And they were wearing all their traditional outfits from 100 years ago. This is my painete from it was so interesting.
Was that the first time it ever happened?
Oh my gosh.
Here on this farm. So so we work through what we call universal shared values. Again, no canceling. We just try to figure out what's common between all of us. We want freedom, we want peace, we want unity, we want love, compassion, understanding, perseverance. It's actually all in the Bible, right? So when the first gathering was here, the 7 tribes, one of them, the Bae, the leader, she got the microphone and she said, we've been traveling, we've been gathering for 100 years to meet each other, to fight. This is the first time we actually gathered together in peace and unity. It must be John's God.
Oh.
Yeah.
Kilabot.
Mm.
And village.
Yeah. So when first, of course, you have to reforest, but at the same time, you have to take care of their food security. They don't have food, but when we visited them, orange their hair. The kids had stomachs like that, no teeth,
Oh.
rotten, yellow eyes, really malnourished and undernourished, and so many worms. Like we dewormed them, and it was coming out of their noses. It was so gross. So and then we also try to give them a sustainable livelihood income crop that will add value and then be part of the economy, right? So we did adlai, coffee, and bamboo through what we call transformational business partnership, because a lot of people like they say, oh, you're a social entrepreneur, and I'm like, I don't think so. Because we're trying to transform behavioral change, lifestyles, the meaning of what it is to live and steward the land, not just a business. So you're transforming lives, you're transforming landscapes, and the way you do business. It has to be fair,
Yeah.
right?
Paradigm shift.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah. So it was a very uphill like that, trying to see if it will work.
Yeah.
You have to try something, right?
Yeah.
You can't just keep on blaming the government or each other, and you did this to me. I'm so tired of that. Let's just do something,
Yeah.
right? So you add value. We add value to those crops. So, for example, if we were smart, and if we wanted this as a business, let's say the coffee, we would have done it just here.
Mm.
This is 100 hectares. Our growership is like 32 hectares, so it's less than this. But it's in different parts of the four mountain ranges. See, Pantaran, Kitanglad, Matigsalot, and Kalatungan, because we were reaching out. So if they didn't want or didn't have time for coffee, they wanted bamboo, so it was bamboo. If they had organized co-ops, then it was adlai. So because the coffee is 1/4 hectare per family, it's little. It's like backyard farming. So the effort of the foundation was more value formation or value coordination, we call it. We set up our little bahay-kubus there, but it's actually churches, for them to gather, and then you share your stories of indigenous, I'll share you our parables. Diba? So it was an exchange, dialogue of beliefs also. So the ethics there is no AWOLing. We're helping you. Don't sell naman the coffee to somebody else. You get what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. So because there's traders out there.
Correct.
If they know it's good.
Middlemen.
Yeah, middlemen. So, we can't control you. We don't have power over you, but we have a relationship with you. So let's try to make this work. So we're honest from the very beginning, because John's history of agriculture, he experienced AWOLing. No,
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Mm-mm. Where am I?
There. Here.
So how did we lose our forest aside from massive years of logging, right? It's also due to kaingin, our practice of slash and burn. It's much easier to do slash and burn than remove that very strong network of kogon grass, because the kogon grass underneath is like a mat. So if I'm a clump of kogon grass and you're a clump of kogon grass, you're actually connected under the soil with this rhizomic root network. So it's a mat underneath. So if you open that up and then plant a tree there, then masasakal after a couple of weeks. So there's a lot of reforestation efforts that is experiencing the difficulty of reforesting the Philippines because of coconut grass. So when you're on a slope, where does fire go? Up, right? So it's going to burn the next line of forested trees, and then next year the next line, and then you'll have something like before, this is before, right, to after. None. That's all burnt out. and the slope is like 80
But I was
degrees.
wondering, there's so much kalbo in Bukidnon.
Yeah,
But isn't it being reforested?
that's what we're trying to do. Yeah. So this is another problem. Every family, 70% of Filipinos still use wood as their fuel for cook. So where do you think they get the wood? Right? So the indigenous people that live in the forested areas of the entire Philippines have a huge market down below
Yeah.
for fuel, wood. So yeah, we have to think and give them a nature-based solution of how
They can have life.
to stop this. Okay, so I'll explain that later when we get to the bamboo houses. Okay, so this is harvest in one day. One family is one bundle a day. So one family does about 2 to 4 hectares, depending how big your family is, of forest a year.
That's huge.
So we're really in the it's a lot of awareness that has to happen, nature-based solutions that have to happen. We have to not say, hey, stop cutting the trees. Who's gonna enforce that? Diba? You have to give them an alternative, a better alternative
Yeah.
always. So I'll show you the better alternative. So in terms of reforestation, the head of UPLB Forestry came here and he's really scratching his head, looking around, going around the farm. It's like, John, how did you do this? And oh well, we were given caliandra seeds and then we planted them in some areas. He noticed that it conquered the kogon naturally. So maybe they were slashing the kogon and kind of like it forms like a canopy, a short canopy on top and blocks the sun like an umbrella. So if this is the kogon, there's no more photosynthesis sa kogon. And then this dies back. So I guess we just need to help it slash more, try to take out the kogon or whatever weeds or grasses there are, mulch it, and then plant the caliandra because it's a tree-like nitrogen-fixing shrub. It grows really fast. And there's so many benefits with caliandra. It looks like ipil-ipil, but the leaves instead of like this, it's like this. It forms that short canopy.
Is it indigenous?
Yeah, so it's not, right? So the UPLB they were here for several months. They stayed here, and they went to our reforestation sites, our tree farming area, and this area, to observe the how caliandra interacts with nature. And so first it conquers the kogon, so we call it in reforestation the pioneering species. So when you grow the forest, it's not automatic, it's in succession. So you have to design it, right? So the problem is kogon, conquer it with caliandra, chop and drop that caliandra on the ground. You're inviting the mycelium as the fungi decomposes the tree, which invites other microorganisms. That's the fertilizer, right? Open that up. On year 2, chop and drop, right? And year 2, plant the indigenous forest tree. Now, what do you want to invite? You want to invite wildlife, so figs, berries, nuts. Really invite the wildlife, and the wildlife also helps you reforest, so it hastens it further. So then you also plan what other indigenous forest trees, the emerging trees that come up like that. So tropical forest is 7 trophic levels.
7.
7.
But I'm counting them fungi, so 8. Because there's vines, there's nuts, there's the emerging, the root crops, the cover crops, and then the pioneering species, and then the fruit canopy, and then the emerging over canopy, the understory and then emerging. But if you add, if in nature, we call it syntropic farming, if you want to call it anything, but nature does natural syntrophy and natural chop and drop. When the wind blows, this tree's hitting that tree, and then it's going to prune that branch. It's going to chop and drop itself. So then the mycelium comes decomposing that. So we're going to observe that while we walk around later.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's the first line of defense. so to
Yes,
speak.
yeah. And so we also noticed, I should put that photo up here, but on our tree farm, which is 3 kilometers up, and it's monocrop, part of it is monocrop Caribbean pine trees, which is not from here. So we used Caliandra as the pioneer species and then grew Caribbean pine on the flat area. So there's no soil erosion, but there's hardly any biodiversity because it's monocrop, you learn things along the way. But the reason why, what we learned most there is that there was a forest fire from the Kogon outside, came inside, but since the Caliandra kept the bottom of the forest floor moist with humus, the fire couldn't pass through. So it is a solution for fire. Imagine the whole Philippines burning, how sad
Oh
would
my
that,
gosh.
right? That's the Caribbean pine. So if you see, this is Caribbean pine, Caliandra, and that is Kogon. So it's outside the tree farming. Okay, so this is our forest over here. So we have indigenous forest trees naman. The other benefits is that it self-propagates during the summer. The pods, they have seed pods, and then when it gets so hot, it starts popping like popcorn, and it'll just travel maybe 2 meters, 5 meters forward wherever the wind's blowing. And then later on, you'll see, oh, I didn't plant that Caliandra, now it's here. The next year, it's there. It self-propagates. It's its own fertilizer. It takes care of weeding costs. It's also fodder to a lot of livestock. It attracts deer. The deer love Caliandra. So I think this farm is the only farm with the most, I don't know about only, but one of the most deer populated
Oh,
farms.
you have deer.
Yeah,
Very good.
naturally they came here because they're attracted to the Caliandra and everything else. So we ate deer last night. Did you have deer for breakfast?
No, it was really
It's
good.
good.
Yeah.
Very
Venison.
good.
And
Yeah.
then because everybody else cut their trees, so the wildlife corridor that, because of the deer, diba, came from the forest. So there was a wildlife corridor here before, and they ended up here. In the gullies there were trees, so they would follow the water and they ended up here. When people bought the land uphill, they started delineating their properties into blocks, right? Then cut because they want to see the terrain, and then they'll build their house or whatever, and they cut the trees. So the deer didn't have any way to go back, so they're all stuck here. So the DNR, like I said, through UPLB did a study. So Caliandra on its infancy, the wildling, how it grew, conquered the Kogon, and then how it dies back. So when the indigenous forestry goes above the Caliandra, you'll see it starting to spindle. Now it's thinner, and then it dies back. But the beautiful thing about the Caliandra's energy is still there, alive. It just needs photosynthesis again. Maybe the seeds are there, like weed seeds, right? When, let's say, a tree falls and the sunlight goes back in, the whoop, Caliandra goes back up. It's amazing. So we have a policy brief. It was allowed by the DNR. So Caliandra is now part of the allowed pioneering species for this country. Okay, so that's our, I just explained their methodology, but it's just drawings. So this is our actual reforestation site. If you can see here, it was all cogonal. See, that cogonal was all the way down to the gully to the river here. So we started reforesting from where the river was, then going upwards, right? Because of course it's easier to water, and the groundwater aquifer sort of like connects to the groundwater aquifer of the trees to the river, right? So as you're expanding like this every year, the Caliandra also starts shading or self-propagating up above itself, so it was easier to reforest, right? And then the birds came, the bats came, and then the Philippine eagle came.
Oh, you
Yeah.
have Philippine eagle.
Yeah, so we've reached what we call apex in reforestation sites. I don't know of any other reforestation site that reached apex. So if you watch Netflix, David Attenborough Jungles episode 4, One Planet, they contacted us several years ago and they asked us if we knew where the eagle was. And then we called all the IPs and said the sighting is here in the other side of the forest, the other side of the mountain, the other side of Kitanlad. It's like 3 hours from here if you go by car.
I'm crying now.
Oh. So you have to watch it because we built a platform on a very high tree, eye level to the eagle's nest. So there's the couple and then the fledgling. And they were teaching it how to eat, feeding it, and start growing like that. And then when it's big enough now, how to fly. And so then now that fledgling had to find its own space. It can't have the same circumference as the parents and find its own mate. And there are only one mate per lifetime. So he was sent off. And then he ended up in a reforestation site,
Oh,
which is in this side of the forest.
so you have a male.
I have a male and now it has a female partner. So hopefully, so that's the kabog, that's the
That
Bukidnon
one
wood.
is the chip. Kaya nata-track nila where it goes.
I think it was more the markings. The markings that because
That you found out
the
that
chips have to go through Philippine Eagle Foundation. So it's more the markings of the adult na.
I see.
Yeah. This is a Bukidnon woodcock. So if you look at the Philippine bird book, Philippine bird book,
Those eggs.
they thought that this was extinct or going to extinction, and the digital photographer, the wildlife photographer, was so shocked to see it. So he set up camp there, videoed it birthing, laying eggs.
What's the name?
Bukidnon woodcock.
Woodcock.
Yeah, so the beak is almost half the size of the body.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's kind of like awkward the way it walks and then
Oo.
belly heavy. So
Parang
it's-
dodo.
yes. So it's so conducive to being a prey, being preyed upon. So that cat. This is the deer that we have.
Oh, oh, beauty.
Yeah,
That's our
Yung
indigenous
isang
deer.
sibog na.
Philippine barking deer. So at night,
The one we saw.
when they're nocturnal animals,
You
if we
saw-
see
Yesterday,
one,
yeah.
we're lucky. But they come out like 5 o'clock, 4:35 like that, and then when it's mating season or they get to see each other, they fight. So the mating
Territorial
season
din,
sounds
no?
really horrible.
Yeah.
And then the fighting is another sound, but it sounds like barking. But parang, how would you describe it, Raf?
Parang it sounds like a kid,
Sounds like a
or it
kid
sounds like
Tortured. Right?
yeah.
a
Slash.
girl getting tortured. Sounds like a dog.
And I'm so sorry, but sometimes I forget to tell guests that.
They're like,
Did you sleep well last night? No,
there
somebody's
was
being raped. Kawawa. This is a Mindanao Kalaw. Very special as well. It's like our own tukan.
Oh my god.
So
Different from the Benguet,
yeah,
from the Cordillera.
from Kitanglad. So it's also there. But what's special about them is that you cannot plant the nuts that they eat. The plant get the nut and then plant it. It won't. It has to go through their digestive tract and then they poo it, and then that will be the one that germinates. So if you take out the tree, you're taking out their food system, and then they'll die as a species. But we also have that. So if you'd like to see all our wildlife, if you have Instagram, you can follow our doctor. By his name is Miguel David De Leon on Instagram. So 95% of the animals there are from our reforestation site. So that's our, and we don't pay him. He's so sweet. It's his hobby. So he's an eye doctor, and then on the weekends he's in a reforestation site inside a little camp tent and sticks food.
Cute.
Nice, right? Oo. So our value formation officers also teach about tree farming like bamboo, but not monocrop. Okay, it has to be plan, design. We won the Climate Change Award in Paris in 2000. When was this? I forgot.
2016.
2016.
Congratulations.
So this is our four-prong approach. We're still on our way to perfecting it, but basically reforestation, livelihood, family food security, and climate resilient homes. So you have to design your homes to be climate resilient as well. From the threat of fire, from flood, from earthquakes, from winds and rain, comfortable living. So the top portion just describes the role of the indigenous people. So it's their land and labor because they have what we call the ancestral domain claims or titles, and they have vast lands that were given to them. So it's their land and their labor. So that's their equity. So this is their part of the equity, and our equity is like the know-how, the community engagement, the seedlings, the
Technology.
yeah, the zero trader. So if you remove the trader, then more of the sale can go back to the farmer. So that's how you make it fair, diba? So the important part is PR, marketing, packaging, right? Planning, being representing, whatever. So this, if you notice, Hineleban does not have an endorser.
Yeah.
The endorser is the quality of the product, the story behind it, the indigenous people themselves.
The story, in other words.
Is endorsing it, yeah. So some people actually buy our produce in bulk and then repackage it.
In another name.
Yes, so we stopped that.
So crazy. Grabe.
So here's our growers and here's our processing facilities, and there are our products, right? So you'll see that today.
The processing facilities are also here.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
The Adlai is on the other side of the mountain now because it's too big.
Are these stories already in your website?
Our website's down. But yeah, it was. And then they're fixing it. That Raj is helping us fix it.
Okay.
So instead, I'll just show you na lang a video. YouTube's not down. This is their music.
Which particular tribe is this?
You see a representation of all. But the first one's Talan.
Medyo produce. Sila.
These are the musicians of the
Did you
Talaan
watch
Village.
Halo-Halo?
We get to see them.
Did you get to see?
I did not,
Ay, sayang.
unfortunately.
Nasa ating kagubatan.
That's the brother of Miketa.
Of Miketay. He's the one who's more famous. Right?
Ang forest cover ng Pilipinas ngayon is nasa 1.5% na lang ang natitira.
That's really sad.
Kung ito'y mawawala pa, paano na kaya kaming mga IP o indigenous people na naninirahan sa buffer zone sa bundok? Maaaring ang susunod na henerasyon, wala nang maabutan kung wala ring magproprotekta nito. Ang Hineleban, ang aim ng Hineleban is reforestation.
So we decided to first traverse to the mountainside and explain to the tribes people there that we're going to give them a source of livelihood, because we thought livelihood first before reforestation. The idea was to form the foundation, and so we invited the datus that we knew around here because they were originally the owners of this land.
Dinaan mo na sa secret compact between yung 7 tribo at saka yung Hineleban Foundation.
So we have what we call the Participatory Cultural Impact Assessment there, PCIA. You cannot do anything in their lands without asking permission first. So that's our binding force with the indigenous people, and it's been very effective.
binigay mo na yung pangalang Hineleban sa foundation.
So imagine that's katutubo, it's heirloom, it's ancient grain of the
And the
indigenous
protein
people.
is so high.
Yeah. It's
Native.
internationally known as Job steer. So there's a different version or variety. Here we have 7. One nga you can't eat So the other is so brown, the other one is parang there's pink, red, white rice. So us is violet, there's gray, there's white, there's pink, and the others are mushy, the other ones are full, beady.
And that's all just
From
grown.
from the 7 tribes of Bukidnon. So we work with them. We don't give it to hacienderos to plant, right? So the other brands are from mostly hacienderos, like 99%. So it's not our land, it's not our labor, it's their business. It's their brand. Just thinking, who's gonna be the promoter, the influencer? It's like, how? It's all of them. Like I said, the other tribe will say, but siya, hindi ako. So we couldn't. So the tree na lang. The Hineleban tree. So we had a market study done, and there's a 35% CAGR rate, meaning consumer adaptability, great growth, annual. And if you have 8%, 10%, you're super happy. That's 35. Why? Because even in the Philippines alone, there's 50% of Filipinos over 50 are diabetic. So I asked the DOH what they're doing. They said, yeah, we put up more dialysis centers in every municipality. So,
Yeah.
so all the money went to the dialysis centers
Yeah.
instead of for prevention,
Yeah.
right?
It's way cheaper.
So it's really about diet. Like I feel, Doc, if I drink a lot, like especially hard alcohol, the next day I'm down.
Yeah.
It's just a sugar spike and a boom.
Yeah,
Right.
the
It's so
crash.
obvious. Like when I don't drink, but I see the world. Because we entertain a lot, and Filipinos like to drink, and you know what I mean. It really takes a toll. The hormones, the pituitary gland is clogged. So this is an example of an adlai farmer, and so we do sloping agriculture, land technology. Our field lines don't go down this way; it's across, and then we have hedges holding the soil up, peanuts underneath to give the nitrogen. That's also like a cover crop, and then we collect the water into a pond so that they can actually have fish, and then that's the chicken coop and that's their house. So that's the best example that I can give. It's kind of hard to do this. Like you're saying, it's so hard, it's so expensive. It's like, I know what you mean.
Yeah,
It really is to do an operation,
Yeah.
right? It's like it consumes you, and
Parang
we actually need help from the government, but
Yeah.
then it's still us doing it.
one operation is more expensive than your whole organic chicken coop. Right?
Oh yeah, totally, definitely. Yeah.
It's so hard.
That's how we should
Um,
market it.
So that's our processing facility, but we had to move it to the back because it's on the other side of the mountains. It's more central to the growers.
Yeah.
And so access to market, so PR, right? So Berna Romeo Puyat came here and said, this is adlai, and we're eating it. And with Gaeta Forest, diba? And then she invited her friends, so they go back to Manila. and then they had the World Bex, whatever, Madrid Fusion.
Yeah,
And I said,
Madrid.
why don't we do adlai for the carb of the
Yeah.
year? Good idea. Do you have 500 kilos? Yes, donate.
Bam.
So who were the cooks? All the top chefs of Manila, and who were the ones invited? The mga, social people buy. So that's how we introduced like one big bang. And then food expos, like once a year at least, and then restaurants started ordering. You go to Boracay, Palawan, it's there. They don't grow it, right? So they order from us. Just please pray for us. I really ask for prayers because it has so much big potential. It can uplift as it has been the indigenous people. They have to also learn how to live with that kind of money now.
Yes. To be.
Yeah, because then
To be
you ask that to be, and then so we need help in how to do like how to invest in other things or prioritize budgeting like that. Financial literacy. And then, but over COVID, we had 2 years of no growing. So,
That's a sad
and
part.
so our volume here was spread out to up to now, right? And so we need to start again. It's like press restart, So where do we get the funding na for that? Because wala ng cash flow. The cash flow is supposed to be infinite if the production's there. And then you're selling. And then, so COVID really, really hurt us. So now we're back to zero. Yeah, that's Vic. Yeah, so it's very depressing. So that's Adlai. So we're even in Pau. So Len Yusuf saying that it's her secret carb.
I saw that.
You saw that, right? Yeah, that was us here. Try this. And then she just wrote. Yeah,
So good.
yeah. Then coffee. Coffee was actually our first product or crop, and we joined what we called Philippine Cupping Competition, and then the first 15 or something, so the top 10, most of them were our growers, right? So, which was great. So the Hineleban represented the Philippines in the Specialty Coffee Association Global Expo in Seattle. So we went with Bayan at Lawa and me and other IPs, and then there, wala kaming booth. So, you're not using the side of your booth, can I borrow? So, Hineleban. I had so many cards printed, so making pa cute there, and then the IPs are like, what are we doing
What's
here?
happening?
They were having a headache with all the people in the convention center. They're like,
Yeah,
what the?
that's
Yeah,
2000.
Bayan at Lawan had the hugest migraine.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, so it was really crazy. So this is one of our growers, and I hire experts because we don't know everything about coffee, right? So we hired experts to teach us. So the Philippine Coffee Cupping Competition, I think, is now in a different level because it brings about competition talaga. So the only way Vietnam went from number 58 to number 2 in the world was through a Filipino, Dr. Rafael Creencia, and he helped them with the design that's supposed to be for the Philippines, and the government never supported. So he was recruited by Vietnam. And so what it is basically, if this is Kitang Lad, that's the peak. So all the IPs that live here, they can polycrop with underneath trees coffee, right? It's an understory fruit tree. So you have that means you won't cut the trees, right? And then you center in the middle of all of them a big processing facility. And then this is when Starbucks will come, Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf, because there's volume. If you concentrate on micro lots, so people are selling 250 grams for 1,900 bucks, and then they say from this mountain, from this elevation, great, but it's only 100 kilos. So now this one. Have you tried Henry did this coffee and that coffee? It's now a competition instead of joining forces back and letting the farmers really make the money. Because now it's bidded out. If you have the volume, you have power, right? So when you have power, then the big boys will come and buy from you because you have the volume. You don't have to go competing with each other to make the sale. One sale, 250 grams. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
I hope I explained that right.
Rose, that's the same with medical tourism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How so?
Our medical institutions want to take